My mother held my hand for the last time on May 14, 1999, in the lobby of the Indiana Department of Child Services on Wabash Avenue in Turut. She was holding my hand not because she loved me, but because the caseworker needed both of us to walk to the back office where the paperwork was. And a mother walking through a government building without holding her 8-year-old's hand would have looked wrong to the people in the waiting room. She held my hand for the hallway. She let go of it at the desk. "We can't afford you, Kieran. Your father and we can't pay for the treatment. DCS can get you on Medicaid. They'll take care of you." "Mommy, I want to go home." "This is better for you. They'll have doctors. They'll have medicine." "Mommy, please." "I have to go, Kieran." She signed the form. Voluntary relinquishment of parental custody. One signature on one line on one page that ended 8 years of being her son. She didn't cry. She didn't look at me while she signed. She looked at the form, the way you look at a bill you're paying, with the focused attention of someone completing a transaction. Then she walked out through the lobby, through the glass doors, into the parking lot, into her car, and she drove to her sister's house, where my brother Colton was waiting. Colton, who was 10, who was healthy, who was the son she was keeping. I watched her through the window. The window of the DCS office had a crack in the lower right corner that someone had taped over with clear packing tape. I remember the tape. I remember the crack. I remember the shape of her car getting smaller on Wabash Avenue. And I remember the caseworker's hand on my shoulder, a woman whose name I never learned, whose face I can't picture, whose hand was the first one to touch me after my mother's let go. My father was not present. Wade Ashworth had agreed to the plan by phone. When the caseworker called him to confirm the relinquishment, he said 6 words that are documented in my DCS file, which I obtained when I turned 18. "He'll survive, or he won't." 6 words. The cost-benefit analysis of my life, conducted by my father, delivered to a government caseworker about his 8-year-old son who had leukemia. He'll survive, or he won't. Either way, the math doesn't work for me. 25 years later, my mother left me a voicemail with 6 words of her own. Different words, same math. "Your brother is dying. Save him." But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before I tell you about the voicemail and the bone marrow and the face my mother made when I stood in front of her for the first time in 25 years and told her exactly what she had cost me, I need to tell you what happened between the window and the voicemail. Because the 8-year-old boy who watched his mother drive away from a DCS office did not stay at that window. He turned around. He walked into the system. And the system, imperfect, underfunded, indifferent in all the ways that institutions are indifferent, kept him alive long enough for him to build something that his parents never imagined he could. My name is Kieran Ashworth. I was 8 years old when both of my parents decided independently and then jointly that my leukemia made me too expensive to keep. I was 33 years old when my mother called me to ask if I would save the brother they kept instead of me. The family before the split was unremarkable in the way that struggling families are unremarkable. Common enough to be invisible, specific enough to be painful. Wade Ashworth, my father, was a warehouse worker at a logistics company in Terre Haute. Plett Ashworth, my mother, was a part-time cashier. Combined income, approximately $58,000 a year. 3 children. Colton, 10, the oldest. Me, 8, the middle. Gemma, 6, the youngest. We lived in a 3-bedroom house on a street where the driveways had oil stains and the mailboxes leaned. And nobody hired landscapers because the definition of landscaping was mowing before the neighbors complained. The marriage ended in 1999, standard reasons. Wade was unfaithful, Pete was resentful, and the money was never enough to absorb the stress that infidelity and resentment generate when they live in the same house. The divorce was filed in March 1999. The custody arrangement was negotiated in April, and the arrangement divided the children like line items on a balance sheet. Pete took Colton, the oldest, healthy, low maintenance, the son who required food, clothing, and a bus pass to school. Cost manageable. Wade took Gemma, the youngest, also healthy, the daughter he felt bonded to. Cost manageable. Kieran, the middle child, diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia in March 1999, 2 months before the divorce was finalized. The diagnosis came with a treatment protocol: chemotherapy, regular hospital visits, medications, a possible bone marrow transplant, 2 to 3 years of intensive medical management. The estimated out-of-pocket cost, even with partial insurance, $150,000 to $250,000. Neither parent could afford it. Neither parent wanted to. The leukemia turned me from a child into an expense. The kind of expense that people eliminate when they're restructuring their lives the way corporations restructure their balance sheets. I was the unprofitable division, the line item that didn't justify the cost. And on May 14, 1999, I was divested. I spent the first 2 years mostly in hospitals. The chemotherapy for childhood all is brutal by any standard and incomprehensible by the standard of an 8-year-old. I lost my hair by June. I lost 20 pounds by August. I vomited every morning for 8 months. The particular violent, exhausting vomiting of a body that is being poisoned to kill something that is trying to kill it. I was in a medical foster home in Bloomington, staffed by people who were competent and kind in the way that medical professionals are kind efficiently without attachment. The kindness of a system rather than a family. By 2001, at age 10, I was in remission. Full remission. The leukemia was gone. The child, who both parents had calculated wasn't worth the investment, was alive and cancer-free. And the Medicaid that the state of Indiana provided had done what Wade and Plett Ashworth had decided they could not. It kept me alive. Total cost to my parents? 0. Total cost to me? A childhood. After remission, I moved into standard foster care. 3 homes between 2001 and 2009. The first was in Bloomington, a couple with 3 foster children and the emotional bandwidth of a bus station. I was fed. I was sheltered. I was not seen. I lived there for 2 years, and the most personal thing that happened was a birthday card from the foster mother that said, "Happy birthday, Kieran," in handwriting that suggested she had looked up the spelling of my name before writing it. The second home changed my life. Indianapolis. A single man named Merritt Callahan, 48 years old, pharmacist. He fostered teenage boys. Not because he was required to, not because he received a stipend, but because he had been a foster child himself in the 1970s and understood something that most people don't. That the thing foster children need most is not a house. It's a person who pays attention. Merritt paid attention. He noticed that I tested 2 grade levels above my age in math and science. He enrolled me in an accelerated program at the public school in his district. He bought me a computer, a $400 Dell desktop that he set up in the spare bedroom. And that computer became the first machine I ever took apart and put back together. Which is relevant because the thing I would eventually build for a living is a machine. Merritt said something to me once that I have never forgotten. I was 13. I had been living with him for a year. I asked him why my parents gave me up. They couldn't see past the cost. He said, "The world is full of people who can't see past the cost. Your job is to become something they can't put a price on." I left Merritt's home at 15. Foster placements are reassigned for reasons that the system understands and the children do not. My third home was in Fort Wayne. Fine, unremarkable. I spent 3 years there finishing high school and being self-sufficient in the way that foster children are self-sufficient. Not because they're mature, but because they've learned that depending on other people is a structural risk. I aged out of the system in 2009 at 18. Merritt, who had maintained contact even after I was moved, helped me apply to Purdue University. I was admitted with a full scholarship in biomedical engineering. I chose biomedical engineering because the machines that had kept me alive, the blood analyzers, the diagnostic equipment, the devices that detected the leukemia markers in my blood, were machines that I understood, not just medically, mechanically. I understood them the way I understood Merritt's computer, as systems that could be opened, examined, and rebuilt to work better. I graduated from Purdue in 2013 at age 22. I took a job at Stryker in Chicago, a medical device company, as a junior engineer. I learned the industry. I learned the supply chain. And I learned what was missing. The diagnostic equipment that hospitals used for cancer detection was massive, expensive, and inaccessible. A full leukemia diagnostic panel cost $800 or more. It required specialized lab equipment that only major hospitals could afford. Rural clinics, low-income communities, the places where children like me grew up, they didn't have access. By the time those children were diagnosed, the leukemia was advanced, the treatment was harder, and the survival rate was lower. I knew what that looked like. I had been that child. And I knew what the machine needed to be. Smaller, cheaper, faster. A device that could detect leukemia markers in a standard blood draw, processed in minutes instead of days, at a cost that a rural clinic in TruthHUB could absorb. In 2015, I quit Stryker. I moved to Denver. I rented a one-bedroom apartment and spent 9 months building a prototype on a folding table in the living room. The device, I called it the Vigil Sentinel, used microfluidic technology to analyze blood samples for leukemia biomarkers. 12 minutes, $40 per test, 94% accuracy. I raised $2.5 million in venture funding in 2016 from a medical-focused VC firm in Boulder. I spent 3 years navigating the FDA approval process, clinical trials, documentation, the bureaucratic precision that medical devices require before they can touch a patient. The Vigil Sentinel was approved in 2020, first hospital contracts the same year. Revenue, $8 million. By 2024, Vigil Medical Technologies had 340 employees, contracts with over 200 hospitals and 85 rural health clinics, and annual revenue of $120 million. I owned 62% of the company. At a valuation of $450 million, my personal stake was worth approximately $280 million. The device has detected early-stage leukemia in approximately 4,200 children since 2020. Early detection, early treatment, early remission. Children whose families couldn't afford a full diagnostic workup. Children who would have been diagnosed too late if the Vigil Sentinel didn't exist. Children like the 8-year-old boy who was handed to the state of Indiana because his parents did the math, and the math said no. That boy built a machine that says yes. Now, let me tell you about October 2024. Because October is when the phone started ringing. The numbers were Indiana area codes 812. Terry, hot, 317, Indianapolis. 812 again. Evansville. Numbers I didn't recognize, from a state I hadn't returned to since I left for Purdue in 2009. Day 1, 8 missed calls. Day 2, 12. Day 3, 15. Day 4, 22. I didn't answer my assistant screen's company calls. These were coming to my personal cell, a number I keep private, a number that is not listed anywhere public, a number that someone had paid to find. Day 5, 1 voicemail. I played it at 8 a.m. Sitting in my office on the 14th floor of Vigil Medical's headquarters in downtown Denver, looking at the Rockies through Florida to ceiling windows in a building I built with a disease I survived. A woman's voice, older than I remembered, shaking in a way I didn't remember because the Pite I knew didn't shake. The Pite I knew signed forms with steady hands and walked out of buildings without looking back. Your brother is dying. Save him. 6 words from the woman who had said, "We can't afford you," 25 years earlier. The math had changed. The cost of losing Colton now exceeded the cost of contacting the son she'd thrown away. And so she called, not because she missed me, because the equation demanded it. I listened to the voicemail 3 times. Then I set the phone on my desk and looked at the mountains and thought about what it means when the person who abandoned you needs you, not wants you, not misses you, needs you the way a patient needs a transfusion. A biological requirement, not love chemistry. I didn't call back for 8 days. I spent 3 of those days consulting with my own hematologist, a physician I've seen annually since remission, a woman who monitors my blood the way I monitor my company, with the patient attention of someone who knows that the thing you survived can come back if you stop watching. She confirmed what I suspected. As Colton's biological sibling, I had a 25% chance of being a full bone marrow match. If I matched, the donation was straightforward. 4 to 5 hours, mild discomfort, full recovery in 2 weeks. On day 8, I called Petty. Petty, not Mom. Kieran. Oh my God, Kieran, thank you for calling back. Your brother, I know, leukemia, AML, acute myeloid. He needs a bone marrow transplant. You're the only sibling match possibility left. Gemma wasn't a match. The registry doesn't have anyone. Kieran, please, how did you find my number? Gemma found your company online. She called Vigil Medical. They wouldn't give us your number. We hired a service. You hired someone to find me? Interesting. You didn't hire anyone to find me for the first 25 years. Silence. The particular silence of a woman who has been hit with a fact she cannot argue with and is choosing not to try. I'll consider the donation. I have conditions. Anything. I meet Colton first, alone. No parents, no family. Just me and my brother. I'll decide after. I flew from Denver to Indianapolis on a Tuesday in November, 2024. Met Colton at a hotel near the hospital. Private room, no cameras, no parents. Just 2 brothers who hadn't seen each other since one was 10 and the other was 8. Since one was driven to an aunt's house and the other was driven to a government office. Colton looked like me. That was the first thing I noticed. Not identical. He was taller, broader, the build of a man who had eaten 3 meals a day in a house where someone cooked for him. But the jaw was the same. The eyes were the same. The Ashworth genetics were legible in both of us. Despite 25 years of different diets and different lives, he also looked like he was dying. The chemotherapy had taken 30 pounds. He was wearing a baseball cap over a bald head. His skin had the gray-yellow undertone of a body that is fighting something it might not beat. He looked like I had looked at age 9. And the recognition was so precise, so visceral, that I had to sit down before I said hello. "Kieran, thank you for coming. How are you feeling?" "Terrible, but alive. The chemo is buying time. The transplant is what actually fixes it." "What did Mom and Dad tell you about me when I was gone?" "That you were sick? That you needed special care that the state could provide? That it was the best thing for you?" "They told you it was the best thing for me." "I was 10, Kieran. I believed them. They lied. Mom drove me to DCS and signed a relinquishment form. She said, 'We can't afford you.' Dad confirmed it by phone. He said, 'He'll survive or he won't.' They didn't send me to special care. They threw me out because my leukemia cost too much. They kept you because you were healthy. They kept Gemma because Dad wanted a daughter. They discarded me because I was the expensive one." Colton's face went through something I recognized. The same structural failure I had seen in bridges. The same pattern of stress lines appearing before a collapse. Confusion. Disbelief. Then the crack. The moment when the weight of the information exceeds the capacity of the narrative he's been carrying for 25 years. "That's not," Mom said. "You went to a special facility." The special facility was a foster home in Bloomington, where I slept on a bunk bed and went to chemo 3 times a week alone. I was 8. I had cancer. And the people who were supposed to be there were in TruthHUB and Evansville, raising the children they could afford. He was crying, not from the leukemia. "I didn't know, Kieran. I swear. I believe you. You were 10. You believed what they told you because that's what children do. Will you still the donation? I'll do the test. If I match, I'll donate. Not for Pet, not for Wade. For you. Because you were a child too. You didn't choose to be kept any more than I chose to be thrown away. And for Ren, your daughter deserves a father." "You know about Ren?" "I know about all of you. I've known for years. I didn't contact you because the people who connect you to me are the same people who disconnected me from you. And I wasn't ready to hold both of those things at the same time." I was tested the following week. Full HLA typing. The results came back in 4 days. Full match. The boy who was abandoned because of leukemia was a perfect bone marrow match for the brother who was kept. The disease that made me disposable had produced in my marrow the exact cellular composition that could save Colton's life. The transplant was performed at Indiana University Health Methodist Hospital in Indianapolis in January 2025. I flew in from Denver. 4.5 hours in the procedure room. They extracted marrow from my hip bones with a needle, a process that sounds medieval and feels about the same. I was discharged the next day. Colton received the marrow. Within 2 weeks, the engraftment was confirmed. My cells were reproducing in his body, replacing the diseased marrow with healthy marrow, doing what bone marrow does when it's given the chance to work. After Colton was stable, after the doctors confirmed engraftment, after the numbers started climbing, after the prognosis shifted from uncertain to favorable, I requested a meeting with my parents. Not Colton, not Gemma, my parents, both of them in the same room. For the first time since the DCS office on Wabash Avenue, conference room at the hospital, February 2025. I chose a hospital conference room deliberately. Neutral ground, clinical lighting, the environment of a place where outcomes are delivered and reactions are observed. Pate walked in first. 56 years old, she had dressed up, a blazer, pressed pants, Earrings, the outfit of a woman who is meeting the son she abandoned and wants to be seen as someone who wouldn't have done what she did. She sat down across from me, and her eyes filled with tears before I said a word. Wade walked in second, 58 years old. He looked exactly the way men look when they have spent 25 years avoiding a reckoning, and the reckoning has arrived in a conference room. He sat down next to Petty. He did not look at me directly. He looked at the table. "Thank you for saving Colton," Petty said. "I didn't save Colton for you." "I know, but I have things to say. You're going to listen." They sat. I stood. I did not sit because the last time I was in a room with my mother, she was standing over me, and I was 8, and I was looking up. I will never look up at Paul Ashworth again. On May 14th, 1999, you drove me to DCS and signed a form that ended my childhood. I was 8. I had leukemia. I was terrified. You said 4 words. "We can't afford you." And you walked out. Wade, you weren't there. You confirmed by phone. You told the caseworker, and I have the file. He'll survive, or he won't. Those words are in a state document about your 8-year-old son. WDE's jaw tightened. Plett's tears were running, but she wasn't making any sound. After you left, I spent 2 years in cancer treatment alone. I was 8, 9, 10 years old, going through chemotherapy in a state-funded medical home. I lost my hair. I lost 20 pounds. I vomited every morning for 8 months. No parents held my hand during any of it. The nurses did. The Medicaid oncologists did. The state of Indiana did what you decided you couldn't. Kieran, I survived. I went into remission at 10. I spent 8 more years in foster care. 3 homes. One man, a foster father named Merritt Callahan, saw what you never looked for. He recognized my intelligence. He bought me a computer. He drove me to science competitions. He told me I was worth more than what it cost to keep me alive. He did what parents do. He saw me. Kieran, we wanted. You wanted nothing, Pet. You wanted Colton. Wade wanted Gemma. And the child with cancer was the line item you eliminated. I wasn't a son. I was a budget problem. And you solved it by handing me to the state. I paused. Not for drama, because the next part is the part that matters. I went to Purdue on a full scholarship, biomedical engineering. I worked at Stryker. I learned the medical device industry. And in 2015, I started a company in a 1-bedroom apartment in Denver that builds diagnostic equipment for early cancer detection. The company is called Vigil Medical Technologies. It's valued at $450 million. I own 62%. My net worth is approximately $280 million. I watched that number land. Pledge's face didn't move. It was already overloaded. WDE's did. His head came up from the table. He looked at me for the first time since entering the room. And on his face was not pride, not regret, not shame. It was calculation. The same calculation he had performed 25 years ago. Cost versus value. Except this time, the value was $280 million, and the cost was standing in front of him, telling him what he had thrown away. The device I build, the Vigil Sentinel, detects leukemia markers in a standard blood draw. 12 minutes, $40. It has detected early-stage leukemia in approximately 4,200 children since 2020. Children whose parents couldn't afford a full diagnostic workup. Children like me. I built that company because of what you did. Because you taught me at 8 years old that the world puts a price on sick children. And I decided to change the price. Kieran, Don't say sorry. You're not sorry you abandoned me. You're sorry I became someone worth apologizing to. If I had died at 9 from the leukemia you didn't want to pay for, you would have spent the rest of your lives telling people you had 2 children. You would never have mentioned the third. WDE spoke for the first time. That's not fair, Kieran. I looked at my father, this 58-year-old warehouse supervisor, who had shrugged his way through the decision to abandon his son, and was now telling the son that the son's assessment wasn't fair. You said he'll survive or he won't, about your 8-year-old son who had cancer. You said it to a government caseworker. It's in the file, and you want to talk to me about fair. Wade went silent. He would stay silent for the rest of the meeting. Here's what happens now. I donated bone marrow to Kalulton because he is my brother, and because his daughter Ren is 4 years old and deserves a father. That is my gift to him, not to you. You don't receive anything from me. No relationship, no access to my company, no money, no phone calls, no visits. You don't get to introduce me as your son at church functions. You don't get to tell your friends about Vigil Medical. You don't get to claim me now that I'm worth claiming. Kieran, I'm your mother. You were my mother for 8 years. Then you signed a form. The woman who was my mother left the DCS building on May 14th, 1999. The woman sitting in front of me is Petty Dunning, a receptionist from Terra Haute, who gave up her middle child because his medical bills exceeded her willingness to be his parent. That's who you are. I walked to the door, turned back. I told Colton the truth. Everything. The DCS office. What you said. What Dad said. He knows all of it. Petty's face collapsed. What he does with that information is between you and him, but he knows who you are now, the same way I've known for 25 years. I walked out, down the corridor, into the elevator, into the parking garage, into the rental car. I drove to the airport. I did not look back, because looking back is what you do when you're leaving something that matters. And nothing in that conference room mattered to me. The people who mattered, Colton stable in a hospital bed, with my marrow rebuilding his blood. Ren at home with Heather, too young to know how close she came to losing her father. Merritt in Indianapolis, who had texted me that morning. Proud of you, son. Those people mattered. The 2 people in the conference room had stopped mattering on May 14th, 1999. And no amount of tears or blazers or calculations was going to change that. It's March 2025 now, 2 months since the transplant. Colton is recovering. The engraftment held. His numbers are climbing. His oncologist has moved the prognosis from uncertain to good. The brother who was kept is alive because of the brother who was thrown away. Colton called me last week not to talk about the transplant, to tell me something. I confronted Mom about what I told you about all of it. The DCS office, what she said, what Dad said. I asked her to explain. She tried. She said she was young and scared and broke. I told her that being scared doesn't make it okay. I told her that my brother saved my life and she tried to end his. And I told her that if she ever contacts you again, if she calls you, if she shows up in Denver, if she sends so much as a letter, I'm done with her too. Colton, you don't have to. I do. Because I was the son she kept. I spent 25 years thinking that meant she loved me more than you. Now I know it just meant I was cheaper. She didn't keep me because I was her favorite. She kept me because I didn't cost anything. That's not love, Kieran. That's accounting. And I can't sit across from her at Thanksgiving knowing that. Gemma, my sister, 31, has contacted me separately. She was 6 when the divorce happened. She has no memory of me. She grew up with Wade in Evansville and was told the same sanitized story Colton was told, that I went to a special care facility. She learned the truth in January from Colton, and she has spent the last 2 months processing it. She called me 3 weeks ago. Her voice was small. Kieran, I don't know what to say. You were 6. There's nothing you need to say. I want to know you if you'll let me. I'll let you slowly. Slowly is fine. Pete has not contacted me since the hospital. Colton's ultimatum sealed it. The son she kept has told her that keeping one and discarding the other is a fact he cannot live alongside. She is at 56, a receptionist in Terre Haute, who has now functionally lost both of her sons. The one she threw away built a $280 million company and refuses to acknowledge her. The one she kept is alive because of the one she threw away, and can no longer pretend the throwing away was anything other than what it was. Wade has not contacted anyone. He exists in the same space he has always occupied. The indifferent middle distance of a man who processes discomfort by refusing to process anything at all. Merritt Callahan flew to Denver last month for the Vigil Medical Annual Company Gala. I had invited him as my guest. When the time came for the founder's address, I stood on the stage in front of 340 employees and I introduced Merritt. This is Merritt Callahan. He was my foster father when I was 13 years old. He is a pharmacist from Indianapolis. In 2003, he bought me a $400 computer and set it up in a spare bedroom and told me that my job was to become something nobody could put a price on. 22 years later, the company you work for exists because of that computer and because of that man. Every device we build, every child we diagnose, every life we extend, the chain of causation runs through a spare bedroom in Indianapolis and a man who looked at a foster kid with cancer scars and saw an engineer. Merritt stood. The room applauded. 340 people standing for a 70-year-old pharmacist who had spent $400 in 2003 and was now standing in a building worth $450 million that existed because he had. He cried. Not a lot. The controlled, efficient crying of a man who is not accustomed to being seen and is being seen by 340 people at once. I walked off the stage and I hugged him. The first hug I had given anyone in a long time. Because physical contact is something I've been careful with since I was 8. And Merritt is the only person for whom the caution has never applied. You did good, son, he said. You did good first. I am 33 years old. I am the founder and CEO of a medical device company that detects the disease my parents abandoned me for having. My bone marrow is currently keeping my brother alive. My mother is isolated in Terre Haute. My father is indifferent in Evansville. My brother is recovering in Indianapolis. My sister is learning to be my sister. And my foster father, the man who actually raised me, the man who saw me when my biological parents looked away, is on the company's wall, framed next to the first Vigil Sentinel prototype in a photograph where he is holding the $400 Dell computer box and smiling the particular smile of a man who had no idea what he was starting. I build machines that detect cancer. I build them because a woman in a DCS office told me that my disease was too expensive for my family. She was right about the cost. She was wrong about the value. The value of a sick child is not measured in treatment bills. It is measured in what that child builds when the treatment is over and the family is gone. And the only thing left is the stubbornness to become something that nobody can take away. Vigil, the name of my company. It means to keep watch, to stay awake, to be present when others have gone to sleep. My parents went to sleep on May 14th, 1999. They closed their eyes and walked away, and went to sleep on the idea that their middle son was a problem that the state would solve, or the disease would solve. And either way, they could stop watching. I stayed awake. For 25 years I've been awake, building, studying, coding, designing, testing, failing, rebuilding, surviving. And the machines I build keep watch while other people sleep. They monitor blood. They detect markers. They catch the disease before the disease catches the child. They do for 4,200 children and counting what my parents refused to do for me. They stay. I built a company called Vigil because someone needs to keep watch. If you know a child who has been left at a window, watching someone drive away, wondering when they'll come back, don't let them stand there alone. You don't have to be their parent, you just have to be their merit. Buy the computer, drive them to the competition, tell them they're worth more than the cost. $400, that's what it costs to change my life. The return on investment is currently $280 million in 4,200 children. Not bad for a Dell desktop from 2003. Subscribe, stay awake, keep watch.